Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has fired his Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa as the battle between Mnangagwa and Mugabe's wife, Grace, to succeed the veteran leader intensifies. This comes after President Robert Mugabe hinted over the past weekend of his intent to fire him. Addressing a multi-church gathering in Harare at the weekend, the First Lady said Mnangagwa wanted to wrestle power from President Mugabe since the 1980s. He's been under pressure since reports suggested that a section of the ruling Zanu PF want him to succeed President Robert Mugabe. Let's discuss what's going on and more insight into Zimbabwe's rising political tensions in the leadership race. We're joined in studio by Professor David Moore, who's with the Department of Development Issues from the University of Johannesburg. Prof, thanks again for being with us here on the program.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, I mean, what does the firing of the Vice President mean? I mean, what's happening?
Well, as you said, it does mean chaos. It's been brewing for quite a while. There's been tensions between this so-called G40 group, which is Generation 40, people under 50, who seem at this time to be behind the Grace Mugabe challenge. So she's not working just on her own. So back, 6 weeks ago, Jonathan Moyle, who's one of the leaders of the G40, and I think South Africans know of him, he was very high up in the information realm, had a huge video presentation that he presented to the Politburo on all of Mnangagwa's crimes. And then, of course, a few weeks ago we had the visit of Mnangagwa here because people thought he was poisoned, right? So this has been going on for quite a while. What... is it coming to the fore because perhaps Mugabe is very, very close to the end, and Grace Mugabe thinks she'd better put her hand on the dynasty, or is it this younger generation pushing things because Mnangagwa seems weak? But as they don't call him the crocodile for nothing. He kind of can sit under the water for a while and come up and snap. We've had, back in 2004, he was in big trouble for apparently plotting a coup against Joyce Majuro as vice president, and then he worked later with Grace Mugabe in 2014 to sideline Joyce Majuro, and now the tide's turning against him. Yeah.
So, but if you have to look within the ranks of Zanu PF, I mean, we heard President Robert Mugabe actually saying, that obviously Mnangagwa's his behavior is angering him, and said that he must go and form his own political party together with his supporters. That's what he's going on to say. But how much support has he got within the party as opposed to Grace Mugabe?
I don't think Grace Mugabe has a lot of support within the ranks of the party. So one will have to get support at the branch meetings before the December Congress, much similar to what's going on here, right? Mnangagwa has support from within a faction of the war veterans, and they've been on the streets since early 2016. But it is very strange because Mugabe and Mnangagwa have been very, very close since the early mid-1970s. They've been side by side through many of these tumultuous twists and turns. So in the mid-70s, when there was a leadership vacuum, a similar sort of fight developed. Mugabe came up on top. Generational fight, some ethnic elements, ideological elements. Now it seems the time has come full turn again. So something is really going to happen this time. I think Robert Mugabe has been able to twist and turn and get the factions against each other. When one seems too strong, he goes against that. And it's almost like it's in his genes now. Yeah. It's time to stop, but I don't think he realizes that. You know?
But I mean, what's the reaction been so far from Mnangagwa? Is he leaving? Because I'm reading very differing reports. We're saying he's not going anywhere. He is going to stay in his position as vice president, even though he has been fired. And then, of course, there's the support of the army, and it's getting very, very dirty at the moment.
It could be very, very dirty. Again, depending on what happens in the army. The senior people in the army are kept on one-year contracts by Robert Mugabe. So and they're getting old anyway. They're sort of beyond retirement days, so he keeps them on his whims. So it'll be very, very difficult for them to go out openly supporting Mnangagwa. But I'm sure this is what people are talking about. What do the junior ranks think? Back in 2009, when the junior ranks weren't getting paid, they were out on the streets beating up vendors. It was getting very, very messy. If they can continue to be paid, and that's questionable, because the economy is going again into a nosedive as the bond notes are being printed, the treasury bills are floating around on this sort of false electronic money, and inflation is going up. So people fear, you know, what will happen similar to 2008, 2009 before that election. If Mnangagwa felt he had the support of military leaders, or they were being pushed out, where would he go? Would he set up his own party? Would he set up a party with Joyce Majuro, with whom they've been at loggerheads for years and years and years?
He was also very vital in her removal.
Yes. There were talks weeks ago about conversations with Morgan Tsvangirai. Now, to complicate matters further, the opposition is very weak. It has split into very many pieces.
Yes.
There's an alliance, and Morgan Tsvangirai is very sick. And he's also a bit like Robert Mugabe, not admitting that he's very sick.
Yeah.
So you have a leadership crisis in both parties, in both major parties. The military doesn't seem to know what to do. The Generation 40 politicians may have to make a more vociferous, tougher move against Mnangagwa. Say, okay, now's the time to get up. That would really force them into a tight, tight corner, and they haven't been in such a tight corner before. And of course, there are two sort of wild cards. If Robert Mugabe leaves the mortal coil, would Grace Mugabe really, really climb in, protect the family, work with maybe divisions she hasn't worked with before? So, as you say, it's a very, very delicate situation,
really
especially for its big neighbour to the south.
Well, exactly, and that you're talking about us as well. Let's just look at Grace Mugabe now, because, I mean, many people saying that with this firing of the Vice President, this is now opening the door wide open for the appointment of Grace Mugabe as the Vice President, because according to Robert Mugabe, the Vice President position is open now. She has been endorsed by their equivalent of our ANC Youth League, their Youth League of the Zanu PF. She is the president of the Women's League of the Zanu PF. So this, and there's been talks of reshuffles within their cabinet as well, so that a woman could become the deputy president, or the vice president, I should say. Is that the next step?
It's probably the plan before the December Congress to get this all together. There was a cabinet shift a couple of weeks ago, and the most moderate, liberal, IMF-friendly cabinet minister in finance was put in charge of being the policeman for social media, and the finance minister seems to be less Western or liberal than the old one. So I don't know if cabinet seems to have been done and dusted, but you do have to make room, because the vice president generally is Minister of Justice. Mnangagwa lost that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So the next step was to kick him out of the vice presidentship and see what happens at the cabinet reshuffle and at the Congress in December. Or it still could be moved up as an emergency Congress.
Yeah,
right?
gee whiz, it's sounding to mirror something back home, I think. One question I need to ask you before we wrap up the interview, which of course has been very much so in headlines and all over. I mean, we remember during that previous cabinet reshuffle, President Robert Mugabe instituted a brand new ministry, and that was the Cybersecurity Ministry.
Yes.
I mean, this is something crazy at the moment, to clamp down on the use of social media. But now what happened is that we saw American citizen Martha O'Donovan being arrested for insulting President Robert Mugabe on her Twitter account. She might face 20 years in jail. I mean, what is going on here?
Well, the social media became really big when the Ewan Mawarira, the priest who had the flag, remember this flag in July 2016, and there was a lot of mobilization behind that. There was a stay away. Teachers, nurses kind of led that. So there's a fear of the possibilities of social media leading a new sort of colorful revolution, you know, orange revolution, whatever. And the new generation of activists really uses a lot. So Chinamasa, who was Minister of Finance, and is very good at doing. He's very efficient. So it's different than finance, but it's a hands-on sort of ministry. Follow the Chinese model, get all the technology in there to watch people, create these laws, social media laws. But at the end of the day, the ruling party, Zanu PF, has managed to tweak elections the way it likes, using the Israeli election manipulation company to help out. There's always the intimidation, because nobody forgets 2008, during the runoff election when many, many people were killed. And of course, Mnangagwa was behind that. And don't forget, Mnangagwa was really the key man in Gukurahundi. So it's not as if we should really feel sorry for him. No, but I think what we do worry about is the chaos and the stability and the future
of our neighbouring country, and that at the end of the day is a big concern for us. We have to leave it there. I know there's so much to talk about, but thanks for giving us an analysis here on what's happening in Zimbabwe at the moment. Professor David Moore from the Department of Developmental Issues at the University of Johannesburg, wrapping up that conversation on Zimbabwe. Let's take a break. We've got some comedy after this. We're lightening things up quite a bit. Palesa is going to be talking to our comedian after the break.